Greetings, Internet. Callisto here. You guys, but personally, I'm feeling a little disappointed in FPS games recently. Used to be a point in time where FPS was like one of the most exciting genres, especially for PC gaming. With all the mods, the interesting games, and people pushing boundaries, but you don't really see that anymore. And the more I think about it, the more I hate Activision. And love Infinity Ward, hate Activision. Infinity Ward's probably, I mean, they gotta be one of the best development studios ever. They've just made so many great games. I mean, Jesus, what the hell have they made? They made Medal of Honor, Call of Duty, Titanfall, Apex. I mean, these motherfuckers just make games that are just nuts. I mean, they've got a track record that, I mean, really, I think Blizzard's probably the only company that can fuck with Infinity Ward as far as track record. And Blizzard's like, I don't know, they're like borderline publisher, so it's almost not even really a comparison. The reason I hate Activision is the way that they cashed in on Call of Duty 4, man. Call of Duty 4 was one of the best FPS games ever. Like, considering like the time it came out and what it did for the genre, like that game was just, it just put so much together at the right time. There was like all these little pieces of FPSs floating around, like, for whatever reason, like modern games that take place in modern times seem to do better than games that are like, for example, like a World War II game or a Battlefield 2142 kind of game. Like, those games never seem to really catch on fire the same way that games that take place in the modern day do. Except for, I mean, I guess you have like one-offs like Halo, kind of a futuristic game that was nice. But for the most part, games that take place in modern day seem to do really well financially. I mean, Call of Duty started off, knocked off. Call of Duty started off as a game that was World War II. I mean, I think the first 3 Call of Duties were all World War II games, and then when Modern Warfare came out, that was when the series took off. And so I think, you know, the time period it took place in was a little bit of its success, and then the other part was they just got the progression they got just so good, man. Like, no FPS game, well, actually 21 Battlefield, I think, was the first multiplayer FPS game where I can remember where they started putting that together, the progression where, like in Battlefield 2, you had some very basic unlocks as far as, could you unlock guns in that game? Fuck, I can't remember. You could definitely, what could you unlock in that game? Was it pieces of the kit? There was something you could unlock. I can't fucking place it now. I think it, there was guns, right? But it was basic anyways, like it wasn't anything giant. And then 2142 came out, I think it came out a year or 2 after Battlefield 2, and they started putting that together some more. Like, they had like big chunks of the kit and perks and stuff. Like, you could choose to have heavy armor or light armor, and if you had light armor you could move faster, and heavy armor you could take like an extra shot. And that was awesome. I love that game. That was one of my favorite. That's my second favorite Battlefield game after 2142, like, or 1942. Like, that game was so good. It did so much right. And then Call of Duty came out, would have been, I think Call of Duty 4 came out in 2007. And they took a lot. They took the pieces that 2142 put together, and they just knocked it out of the park with like the perks and the guns and the skins. Like, they just took that idea and they just fucking. They just put it with the complete package, good maps, good gunplay, modern time period, and that just put that series into the stratosphere, and they just made a juggernaut. And I mean, kudos to Infinity Ward for putting all that together. You know, they didn't, like, I wouldn't say they were really like trailblazers as far as any of the components, but they did what Blizzard does. They just took a bunch of good things and put them together in the right way. And I mean, I had fun with the game. I give them respect for that. But then you got Activision, who saw the financial gain that they got from that, and they just fucking ran it. They ran that series into the ground, man. I mean, they pump out 1, sometimes 2 a year, and like, I mean, you're just not gonna have they're just cashing in on that shit, which is pretty sad considering, you know, the space that Call of Duty holds, like, historically as an FPS game. They did so much good with that game, and it's just so sad to see what it's become and what it's caused. Like, you've got all these clones now that want to be the multi-billion-dollar juggernaut that Call of Duty is. Like, especially, especially, whatchamacallit there, EA. Like, EA, man. They're just always chasing the latest flavor. Like, back in the day, like when Battlefield 2 came out, EA was marketing it as Counter-Strike with vehicles. Like, that's what they were saying it was. And I mean, it wasn't at all. It didn't play anything like Counter-Strike, but that's what they billed it as. So, like, before Call of Duty became the big thing, EA wanted to be Counter-Strike, and then once Call of Duty came out and just had this crazy effect on the market, they were just printing billion-dollar bills. Then EA wanted to be, from that point forward, they tried to make Battlefield Call of Duty. Like, every Battlefield game that came out after Call of Duty 4 was just inching closer and closer. They focused less and less on, their gameplay and the vehicles, and man, everything that made Battlefield good, they just started getting rid of. I mean, it's Activision's fault for ruining Call of Duty, and then it's the rest of the industry's fault for just chasing them, wanting to be the next Call of Duty. Because, I mean, before Call of Duty, the big thing was Counter-Strike, and then Halo 2. Halo was a giant game. Like, Halo was the juggernaut for the longest time. I mean, when the hell did the first Halo come out? It's like 2000... It's like 2000, 2001? Actually, it might have been a bit later than that. It's like 2002, 3, something like that anyways. But yeah, Halo was a juggernaut for the longest time. But I don't really remember people trying to be Halo. Like, everybody was just trying to do their own thing, like in the, like the early to mid 2000s was just such a great time for FPS. You had like Battlefield out there, Halo out there, the early CODs, which I didn't even like the early like World War II CODs. Like that wasn't really my scene. Loved Call of Duty 4, but didn't like the earlier ones. But then once Call of Duty 4 came out and became this thing, everybody just wanted to be it. EA fucking especially, man. Like, they ruined. Like, I loved Battlefield games. I fucking despise them today. I haven't bought a Battlefield game since Battlefield 3. I mean, it's just gross what they did to the series, man. Battlefield was so fun, just... Especially, like, 1942, like... There was just times where you would be playing, and... You would be playing infantry, you'd be trying to capture a point, and then you'd get... A tank would show up, and you'd be assault, and you wouldn't be able to do anything. Like, the tank would just be sitting there, the point would be about to turn, and you'd just be like, fuck, I can't do anything about this. And then what would happen? A fucking plane would just come out of nowhere, drop a bomb, blow up the tank, and then you'd capture the point, and then a minute later you'd be getting shelled by a ship offshore, and it was just like... the scale of that game was just fucking incredible, man. Like, just the moments you would have, like, you would feel like you were just in this battle on a scale that just no other game has ever captured that. Like, it was just so fun. And then, I mean, you could play infantry, and that was its own, like, game within the game, and then tanking was its own game, and being a pilot was its own game. Like, there was just so much, there was so much you could do, and so much depth, and the way they balanced the vehicles, like they didn't clone the vehicles, like the BF-109 was a plane that, what did it have? It had like speed, and it carried its momentum well, and then you had the Spitfire, which could turn better, so if you were dogfighting a Spitfire, you didn't want to get into a turning war, you wanted to try and get him to pull altitude on you. And then the tanks, you had like the Sherman, which... what the hell was the Sherman good at? I think the Sherman had like a straighter arc, but then the Panzers had more armor or something like that. Like, everything was different, but balanced. Like, the balance in that game was just so fun to play. But then they just got rid of all that. Like, it's just so sad, like, what the Battlefield series has become. And all because everybody wanted to copy Call of Duty. They were just chasing that wave. Like, FPS has just lost its creativity. I feel like people aren't looking for like the next thing, like the next innovative gameplay progression. Everybody just wants to be Call of Duty or the next loot box fucking game. Like, it's just, people are just figuring out interesting ways to get people to spend money instead of interesting ways to push the genre forward, which kind of sucks. I mean, you've got a few games that are kind of bright spots in the last like 5 or 6 years. Like, Overwatch is interesting, although it just kind of takes like elements of MOBA and implements it in FPS. I feel like MOBA, when did MOBAs really start catching on? Like 2012? I feel like they've really stolen a lot of the shine from FPS games, and they kind of move the industry, like, just the whole gaming industry has moved towards loot boxes thanks to, well, I guess they weren't the first, but they're first to really start making money off that shit. Yeah, it would just be nice to see more people just creatively pushing boundaries instead of just trying to be the next X or the next Y. Just, it'd be cool to see like a AAA studio, like an EA or an Activision, like, try and develop a new IP, a new FPS IP that's just, that pushes bounds into a new type of gameplay that FPS hasn't really messed with before. Trying adding like new mechanics. Just do something different. Like, why does everybody want to try and be like the latest thing? I mean, they have like the same problem that China has. Like, China will just steal your shit and try and be the next you. But because China does that, they're never gonna discover themselves because they're too busy stealing everybody else's intellectual property. Like, just do your own shit, man. The best you is gonna be better than the best you trying to be somebody else. I feel like just the people in board meetings, the CEOs behind these AAA companies, they're just missing the mark. Like, there's such an opportunity there to be unique and be original, and they're just missing out on it. And it would be cool to see the budgets of AAA developers go into creating new and interesting FPS games, because I feel like we're lacking that right now. And, yeah, I guess that's it. So, catch you guys next time.